No one thought this case could be solved until new evidence shocked investigators. Welcome to Echo Case File Channel, where we dive into the real stories behind some of the most shocking crimes. Today, we're exploring Florida's most dangerous criminals through recent and trending cases. If you enjoy this content, be sure to like, comment, and hit that subscribe button for more true crime narratives. Case 1. Tahj Brewton. In the quiet community of Ocklawaha, located in Brahyan County, Florida, a horrific series of events unfolded in early March of 2023 that would leave 3 families devastated and a small town reeling from the brutality of youth gone astray. At the center of this tragedy was Tahj Brewton, a teenager whose actions would lead to a life sentence and spark debates about juvenile justice in the state. Tahj Brewton was born on an unspecified date, but was 16 years old at the time of the crimes. Growing up in a challenging environment, Brewton had already encountered the law before this incident. Records show he had outstanding warrants for various felony offenses, including carjacking with a firearm, aggravated assault, grand theft of a motor vehicle, fleeing or attempting to elude a law enforcement officer, and tampering with an electronic monitoring device. These prior brushes with the authorities painted a picture of a young man spiraling into criminal behavior, but nothing prepared the community for what was to come. The events began on March 30th, 2023, when deputies from the Brahyan County Sheriff's Office responded to a call about a person found on the side of the road in the Ocklawaha area. The victim was 16-year-old Layla Silvernail, a local softball standout known for her bright future and kind spirit. She had been shot and dumped unceremoniously, clinging to life. Despite medical efforts, Silvernail succumbed to her injuries shortly after. Her death marked the first in what would become known as the Ocklawaha triple murder. The next day, March 31st, another body was discovered not far from the first scene. This time, it was 17-year-old Michael Hodo Jr., also shot and left on the roadside. Hodo was a typical teenager, full of potential, and his family was shattered by the senseless loss. Investigators began to connect the dots, realizing these were not isolated incidents, but part of a larger, more sinister pattern. The third victim, 16-year-old Camille Coral, was found on April 1st in the trunk of Silvernail's partially submerged car in a pond 9 miles away from where Silvernail had been dumped. Quarles had been shot as well, her body hidden in an attempt to conceal the crime. All 3 victims knew each other and were friends, adding to the heartbreak as families grappled with the betrayal that seemed to underpin the killings. As the investigation intensified, authorities learned that the victims had been riding around with a group of young people, including Brewton and his co-defendants. What started as a night of hanging out turned deadly when armed robberies escalated into executions. According to court documents and witness statements, the group had been committing robberies, but the premeditation became clear through the use of firearms and the callous disposal of the bodies. Hal Brewton quickly became a person of interest. He was already wanted for those prior felonies, and tips led deputies to believe he was armed and dangerous. A statewide manhunt ensued, with a reward of up to $10,000 offered for information leading to his arrest. On April 9, 2023, the U.S. Marshal Service, with assistance from the Lake County Sheriff's Office, captured Brewton just south of Groveland, Florida. He was taken into custody without incident, marking the end of his brief time on the run. Once arrested, Brewton was charged as an adult alongside his co-defendants. The state attorney's office in the 5th Judicial Circuit described the killings as execution style, emphasizing the premeditation and brutality. Brewton, who was 16 at the time, he showed a level of intent that prosecutors argued was indistinguishable from that of an adult. The evidence included confessions from co-defendants, ballistic matches from firearms recovered, and witness accounts that placed Brewton at the scenes. The trial process was lengthy, with Brewton entering a no-contest plea to 3 counts of murder, 1 count of robbery, and 1 count of evidence tampering. On July 23, 2025, Brewton, now 19, was sentenced to life in prison. The judge handed down 3 life sentences for the murders and a 4th for the robbery with a firearm, plus 8 years and 7 days for evidence tampering. This ensured Brewton would spend the rest of his days behind bars, a fate that brought some measure of closure to the victims' families. And the case highlighted the dangers of youth involvement in gang-like activities, as investigators believed the murders were tied to a wannabe gang. Brewton's prior record and the escalation from robberies to homicides underscored how quickly situations can turn deadly. In interviews, family members of the victims expressed their grief, remembering their loved ones as vibrant teens with dreams cut short. Brewton's story is one of lost potential and irreversible consequences. From a troubled youth to a convicted murderer, his path serves as a stark reminder of the impact of choices made in the heat of the moment. As the community of Ocklawaha continues to heal, the memory of those 3 young lives lost remains etched in the hearts of many. Case 2. Christopher Atkins. Shifting focus to another figure in the same chilling Ocklawaha triple murder, Christopher Atkins stands out not just for his involvement, but for his age at the time of the crimes. Atkins was only 12 years old when he participated in the events that led to the deaths of 3 teenagers, making his case one of the youngest prosecutions for murder in Florida's recent history. Christopher Atkins, born on an unspecified date, was 15 by the time of his sentencing, but a mere child of 12 during the murders in March 2023. His background, like that of his co-defendants, involved early exposure to criminal elements, though details remain sparse due to his juvenile status initially. Atkins was part of the group that included Tahj Brewton and Robert Robinson, all charged as adults despite their ages. The sequence of events mirrored those in Brewton's case, as Atkins was directly involved in the armed robberies that turned fatal. On March 30th, 2023, Layla Silvernail was shot and left dying on the roadside. The following day, Michael Hodo Jr. met a similar fate. Camille Quarles was discovered in the car trunk on April 1st. Investigators determined that the victims were targeted in a crime spree that involved robbery and the use of firearms. Atkins's role came to light through the investigation. He was arrested on April 7, 2023, at his home via a search warrant. At the time, he was 12, an age that shocked the public and raised questions about how such a young child could be involved in such violence. Prosecutors argued that Atkins, despite his youth, participated actively, including allegedly shooting one of the victims under duress or threat. According to affidavits, Atkins claimed that Brewton shot Silvernail and Hodo, and that he was forced to shoot Quarles or face harm to his family. This confession was part of a plea deal where Atkins agreed to testify against his co-defendants. The state acknowledged Atkins as the least culpable, but still pursued charges due to the severity of the crimes. Indicted on 1 count of first-degree murder, along with armed robbery and tampering with evidence, Atkins pleaded guilty to first-degree murder. His cooperation was key in building the case against the others. On July 22, 2025, Atkins, now 15, was sentenced to 40 years in prison, with credit for time served and a review after 25 years. The judge noted Atkins' young age, but emphasized the premeditation and callous nature of the acts. Atkins apologized in court, expressing remorse, but the families of the victims found little solace in his words. His sentence was the minimum mandatory, reflecting his cooperation and relative lesser role. Atkins's involvement sparked discussions on juvenile justice reform. How does a 12-year-old end up in such a situation? Factors like peer pressure, lack of supervision, and exposure to violence were cited in psychological evaluations. Despite being the youngest, his actions contributed to the loss of 3 innocent lives. The Ocklawaha case, with Atkins at its heart for many due to his age, underscores the tragedy of youth entangled in adult crimes. As he serves his sentence, the debate continues on rehabilitation versus punishment for child offenders. Case 3. Russell Kot. In the early days of February 2026, Florida was stunned by a cross-state rampage that claimed 6 lives before ending in tragedy, all linked to one man whose actions shattered multiple families in a matter of hours. Russell Kot, a 51-year-old resident of Fort Lauderdale, became the central figure in what authorities described as a deadly shooting spree, stretching from the upscale Victoria Park neighborhood in Broward County to a quiet gated community in Sarasota County, roughly 200 miles to the northwest. The violence began on a Tuesday morning in Fort Lauderdale's Victoria Park area, an affluent enclave known for its historic homes and peaceful streets. Around that time, police responded to a wellness check at a residence in the 500 block of Northeast 15th Avenue. Inside, they discovered two bodies, 46-year-old Larissa Bludaya and her 18-year-old son, Ben Azivov. Both had been shot, their deaths marking the start of a chain of events that would unfold rapidly across the state. Investigators later determined that Bludaya had been in a previous romantic relationship with Kot, and this personal connection appeared to serve as a catalyst, though no clear motive was ever fully established beyond the apparent ties. Surveillance footage captured Kot's vehicle leaving the Fort Lauderdale scene and heading north. Authorities tracked the car through areas like Punta Gorda, confirming its path toward Sarasota. By late morning, around 11 o'clock, Kot arrived at a home in the gated Amberley neighborhood near Proctor Road and McIntosh in Sarasota County. This quiet, upscale community was home to professionals and retirees, far removed from the kind of violence about to erupt. Neighbors reported hearing multiple gunshots shortly after Kot's vehicle entered the area. One resident's Ring camera captured the frantic sounds of gunfire echoing through the streets. Deputies from the Sarasota County Sheriff's Office rushed to the scene and discovered a horrific tableau inside the residence. 4 people dead from gunshot wounds, along with Kot himself, who appeared to have died from a self-inflicted wound. The victims were identified as 49-year-old Olga Greinert, 66-year-old Florida Stolyer, 61-year-old Anatoly Iov, and 39-year-old Yaroslav Bludoy, and sometimes referred to as Stan. Investigators pieced together the connections. Bludaya in Fort Lauderdale was related to some of the Sarasota victims, creating a web of familial and personal links that Kot exploited in his spree. Anatoly Iov and Florida Stolyer were founders of a local medical clinic called Osprey Polyclinic, respected figures in the community who offered various health services. Their deaths, along with the others, left colleagues, patients, and friends in mourning, struggling to comprehend how such targeted violence could invade their safe haven. The Sarasota County Sheriff's Office emphasized in statements that Kot had no documented history of mental health crises or prior violence. No red flags appeared in records to predict this outburst. The investigation remained active, with authorities examining ballistics, eyewitness accounts, vehicle movements, and any digital communications to understand the sequence and intent. Preliminary findings pointed to Kot acting alone, firing on the victims before turning the weapon on himself, ending the rampage in suicide. Communities in both Fort Lauderdale and Sarasota grappled with the aftermath. Vigils were held, families shared memories of the victims' kindness and contributions, and questions lingered about how personal disputes could escalate to such devastation. The case highlighted vulnerabilities even in gated, secure neighborhoods, where a single individual's actions could cross county lines and destroy lives in an instant. Kot's spree, while brief, ranked among the most shocking incidents of early 2026 in Florida, leaving investigators to close a file on a perpetrator who took his secrets with him. Case 4. Ahmad Jihad Bojeh. Just weeks earlier, in mid-January 2026, another random and senseless act of violence rocked Central Florida, this time near the tourist hub of Kissimmee, minutes from the gates of Walt Disney World. Ahmad Jihad Bojeh, a 29-year-old Kissimmee resident, was arrested and charged after allegedly gunning down 3 out-of-state tourists in what authorities called a cold-blooded, unprovoked attack outside a vacation rental home. The victims, 68-year-old Douglas Joseph Kraft from Columbus, Ohio, his brother, 70-year-old Robert Lewis Kraft from Holland, Michigan, and their friend, 69-year-old James John Puchin, also from Ohio, had traveled to Florida for a car show in the Kissimmee area. They were staying at a rental property in the Indian Point subdivision, a quiet neighborhood popular with visitors seeking proximity to theme parks and attractions. On that Saturday afternoon, around 12:13 in the afternoon, deputies from the Osceola County Sheriff's Office responded to reports of a shooting at 296 Indian Point Circle. Upon arrival, they found the 3 men deceased in front of the home, each suffering from apparent gunshot wounds. The scene suggested a sudden, brutal ambush as the victims waited outside, possibly for a rental car delivery or transportation related to their trip. Surveillance video from the area later captured moments before and after the gunfire, showing Bojeh's movements in flight back to his nearby residence. Deputies quickly located Bojeh in the house next door to the rental. He was detained without resistance, and investigators recovered 2 firearms from the property. Bojeh was booked into the Osceola County Jail on 3 counts of premeditated first-degree murder, held without bond. Prosecutors later adjusted charges in some proceedings to second-degree murder amid ongoing reviews, but the severity remained undisputed. What elevated this case beyond a typical homicide was Bojeh's troubling history with law enforcement and mental health issues. Court records revealed multiple prior encounters, including a 2021 incident in Kissimmee where he was charged with attempted first-degree murder with a firearm and aggravated battery. In that case, Bojeh allegedly fired shots at a person and random vehicles in a gas station parking lot. Remarkably, he was found not guilty by reason of insanity in 2022 and released. Additional arrests included felony drug possession and misdemeanor resisting an officer. The Osceola County Sheriff's Office noted 41 calls for service to Bojeh's home from 2006 to 2022, with 16 directly related to him. Families of the victims expressed profound grief, describing their loved ones as kind men enjoying a vacation that turned deadly in an instant. They called the loss unimaginable, emphasizing the randomness that made the crime so terrifying for tourists. Bojeh appeared in court shortly after his arrest, where bond was denied. The case sparked renewed debate over the insanity defense and monitoring of individuals with violent histories, though authorities stressed the attack appeared senseless and without direct provocation from the victims. As proceedings continued into 2026, the community near Disney World remained on edge, a stark reminder that danger can strike even in places associated with joy and escape. Case 5. Robert Robinson. The Ocklawaha triple murder case reached its final chapter in the summer of 2025, when the last of the 3 young defendants faced judgment for a crime that had horrified Marion County 2 years earlier. Robert Robinson, who was 17 at the time of the killings and 19 by sentencing, each received one of the harshest penalties available under Florida law for his role in the execution-style deaths of 3 teenagers he knew. Robinson grew up in the same rural surroundings as his co-defendants, in an area where youthful alliances could quickly turn dangerous. Like the others, he had no extensive adult criminal record at the outset, but the events of late March 2023 exposed a capacity for premeditated violence that prosecutors described as adult-level intent. The victims, 16-year-old Layla Silvernell, 17-year-old Michael Hodo Jr., and 16-year-old Camille Quarles, were friends who had been hanging out together when they encountered the group that included Robinson, Tahj Brewton, and Christopher Atkins. The sequence unfolded over 3 days. On March 30th, Silvernell was shot and left dying on a roadside in Ocklawaha. The next day, Hodo Jr. suffered the same fate, his body discarded nearby. On April 1st, Quarles was found in the trunk of Silvernell's partially submerged vehicle in a pond miles away, also shot. Investigators from the Marion County Sheriff's Office quickly linked the deaths through ballistics, witness statements, and the victims' known associations with the suspects. Robinson was arrested the morning after the final body was discovered, already in custody at a juvenile facility on unrelated matters. Confessions and plea agreements later revealed details of the crime spree. According to accounts from co-defendants, the night began with plans for robberies but escalated when tensions rose among the group. Robinson allegedly fired shots that contributed to at least one of the deaths, with the acts carried out in a calculated manner that included disposing of evidence and bodies to delay discovery. The state attorney's office in the 5th Judicial Circuit charged Robinson as an adult with 3 counts of first-degree murder, armed robbery, and evidence tampering. Despite his age, the premeditation, firearm use, and callous handling of the victims convinced authorities that the case warranted adult prosecution. Robinson entered a no-contest plea in early 2025, avoiding a full trial but accepting responsibility through the agreement. On July 23, 2025, Robinson appeared for sentencing alongside Brewton. The judge imposed 3 consecutive life sentences for the murders, plus additional time for the robbery and tampering charges. He became eligible for a sentence review after 25 years, a provision reflecting Florida's evolving approach to juvenile offenders in capital cases, though the life terms ensured he would remain incarcerated for the foreseeable future. Courtroom moments captured the raw emotion of the day. Family members of the victims addressed Robinson directly, voicing their enduring pain and the void left by the loss of promising young lives. Robinson offered no extensive statement, but the pleas and sentencing brought a measure of finality to a case that had gripped the community since the bodies were found. The Ocklawaha murders, tied loosely to wannabe gang activity and car-related crimes among local youth, served as a grim illustration of how peer dynamics and poor decisions could spiral into irreversible tragedy. Robinson's path from teenager to lifer underscored the consequences faced by those who cross into lethal violence. Case 6. Brahyan Starlyn Prato-Ortega. In the pre-dawn hours of late July 2024, Volusia County experienced a rapid series of armed robberies that targeted vulnerable women and left a trail of fear across Daytona Beach and Holly Hill. At the center stood Brahyan Starlyn Prato-Ortega, a 29-year-old Venezuelan national illegally in the United States, whose actions that single night led to multiple felony charges and eventual transfer to federal immigration custody. The crime spree began around 1 o'clock in the morning at the San Marino Motel on North Atlantic Avenue in Daytona Beach. Prato-Ortega, along with accomplices Maria de Los Angeles Yanez Rey and another individual, approached a woman they had met earlier. They held her at gunpoint inside the motel, forcing her to remove clothing while they rifled through her belongings. The robbers took $101 in cash, a cell phone, and other personal items, dragging the victim by her hair during the assault before fleeing. Hours later, around 4:20 in the morning, the group struck again in Holly Hill. They targeted a woman at an apartment complex, pointing firearms at her and another resident. They stole her Ford Escape sport utility vehicle at gunpoint and drove off. Police from Holly Hill and the Volusia County Sheriff's Office responded swiftly, locating the suspects in the stolen vehicle. All three were taken into custody without further incident. Prato-Ortega faced 2 counts of armed robbery with a firearm and 1 count of conspiracy. Authorities placed an immigration detainer on him immediately, given his undocumented status. He remained in the Volusia County Branch Jail for 226 days following the arrest. In March 2025, court deputies facilitated his transfer to Homeland Security Investigations and Immigration and Customs Enforcement custody for deportation proceedings. The cases highlighted the terror inflicted on the victims, ordinary people going about their routines who suddenly faced life-threatening violence from strangers. News reports detailed the brutality, including the humiliation and physical handling during the motel robbery. Community members expressed outrage over the gunpoint nature of the crimes and the vulnerability of motel guests and apartment residents. Prato-Ortega's involvement drew attention to broader issues of transnational crime patterns, though the incidents remained localized to that one overnight period. As he awaited removal from the country, the victim sought to move forward from the trauma, while law enforcement closed the chapter on a suspect whose brief but intense criminal episode had disrupted multiple lives. Case 7. Wayne Hal Jones Jr. In the heart of DeLand, a city in Volusia County known for its historic charm and quiet streets, an active felony warrant has kept one man's name circulating on most wanted lists well into 2026. Wayne Hal Jones Jr., a 38-year-old black male standing 6 feet 1 inch tall and weighing around 159 pounds with black hair and brown eyes, remains at large on charges that strike at the core of domestic violence horrors. The warrant, issued by the DeLand Police Department, stems from allegations of aggravated battery on a pregnant person, false imprisonment, and domestic battery by strangulation. These are serious felonies that carry no bond and feature nationwide pickup authority, meaning law enforcement across the country is authorized to apprehend him if encountered. The charges paint a picture of a violent domestic incident where the victim was not only assaulted, but allegedly held against her will and subjected to strangulation, acts that endanger not just one life, but 2, the woman and her unborn child. Authorities describe Jones as presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law, yet the ongoing active status of the warrant underscores the severity prosecutors and investigators assigned to the accusations. The DeLand Police Department has publicly sought assistance from the community through Crime Watch postings and Fugitive of the Week features, urging anyone with information on his whereabouts to come forward. Tips can be submitted anonymously online or by calling the department or the Volusia County Sheriff's Office at 386-626-7400. Details on the specific incident date remain tied to the warrant's origination, but the case has lingered unresolved, with Jones's current location listed as unknown. This prolonged fugitive status adds tension to the narrative, when as the alleged victim and her family continue navigating the aftermath, while law enforcement maintains the alert. Public appeals emphasize the danger he may pose, particularly in domestic contexts, and encourage vigilance without speculation. The warrant's visibility on statewide and national platforms highlights how such cases ripple beyond local boundaries, serving as a constant reminder to the public that these charges involve profound threats to vulnerable individuals. As efforts to locate Jones persist, the community in DeLand and surrounding areas remains watchful, hoping for a resolution that brings accountability and safety. Case 8. Dolores Eduardo Lomeli. Also active on the DeLand Police Department's most wanted roster in Volusia County is Dolores Eduardo Lomeli, a 48-year-old Hispanic male approximately 5 feet 7 inches tall, weighing 200 pounds with black hair and brown eyes. Like the previous case, his felony warrant carries no bond and nationwide pickup, reflecting the gravity of the alleged offense. Lomeli faces charges of aggravated assault with a deadly firearm, an accusation that involves the intentional threat or attempt to cause serious harm using a gun or similar weapon. The DeLand Police Department lists his current whereabouts as unknown, and they actively solicit public tips through the same Crime Watch channels used for other fugitives. Anonymous submissions are encouraged online, or direct contact can be made with the department or Volusia County Sheriff's Office at the same number, 386-626-7400. When this warrant places Lomeli among Florida's circulating wanted individuals for violent firearm-related crimes, where the use or display of a deadly weapon elevates a standard assault to a higher felony level. While specific incident details such as exact date, location within DeLand, or victim information are not publicly detailed beyond the charge itself, the no bond status signals the perceived risk to community safety if he remains at large. Authorities stress the presumption of innocence until proven guilty, yet the active pursuit indicates investigators believe sufficient probable cause exists to justify the ongoing search. The case joins others in Volusia County's efforts to resolve outstanding violent warrants, with public awareness campaigns designed to generate leads that could lead to an arrest and court proceedings. Both Jones and Lomeli represent the type of unresolved violent allegations that keep law enforcement on alert and communities informed through most wanted listings. Their cases, tied to the same DeLand Police Department jurisdiction, illustrate different facets of danger, domestic brutality in one, armed threat in the other, yet share the common thread of active hunts that could end at any moment with a tip from an observant citizen. These two outstanding warrants from Volusia County demonstrate how Florida's criminal justice system continues pursuing suspects in serious violent matters long after initial reports. From aggravated battery endangering a pregnancy to assault with a firearm, the charges carry weighty implications for victim safety and public security. As the searches endure into 2026, the hope remains that information will surface, leading to apprehensions and the opportunity for justice to proceed in court. Case 9. Wayne Hal Jones Jr. Deep in the central Florida city of DeLand, where tree-lined streets and historic buildings give off an air of small-town calm, an unresolved violent allegation has kept law enforcement searching for one man since the warrant was issued. Wayne Hal Jones Jr., described in public alerts as a 38-year-old black male standing 6 feet 1 inch tall, weighing about 159 pounds with black hair and brown eyes, faces serious felony charges that center on an alleged domestic assault with life-threatening elements. The DeLand Police Department maintains an active warrant for Jones on counts of aggravated battery on a pregnant victim, false imprisonment, and domestic battery by strangulation. These charges, classified as violent felonies under Florida law, carry no bond amount and include nationwide pickup authorization, meaning any officer who encounters him can make an arrest on site. The accusations describe a scenario where the alleged victim was not only physically attacked, but reportedly restrained against her will and subjected to strangulation, actions that pose immediate danger to both the woman and her unborn child. Public postings from the department and Crime Watch networks in Volusia County repeatedly circulate Jones's details, including photographs and physical descriptors, urging residents to report any sightings anonymously. Tips flow through online forums on the Crime Watch site or directly to the DeLand Police Department in the Volusia County Sheriff's Office tip line at 386-626-7400. The warrant's status remains open, with his location listed as unknown, turning what began as a domestic incident report into a prolonged fugitive pursuit. Investigators in the department emphasize in every release that Jones is presumed innocent until proven guilty in court. Yet the no-bond designation and the nature of the charges reflect the high level of concern for potential ongoing risk. The case draws attention to how domestic violence allegations involving pregnancy can escalate to felony status quickly, prompting swift warrants and broad alerts to prevent further harm. As days stretch into months and now into 2026, the search continues quietly but persistently, with community notifications serving as a key tool in hopes of generating a lead that ends the standoff. The persistence of this warrant in Volusia County's active listings serves as a stark example of how certain violent accusations linger unresolved, keeping families in limbo and law enforcement on constant lookout. Every public reminder reinforces the gravity, from the strangulation element that could have fatal consequences to the false imprisonment that strips away personal freedom in the moment. Until an apprehension occurs, the alert endures, a digital and community-wide beacon for information that could bring the matter before a judge. Case 10, Dolores Eduardo Lomeli. Sharing space on the same DeLand Police Department most wanted roster is Dolores Eduardo Lomeli, a 48-year-old Hispanic male listed at 5 feet 7 inches tall, weighing approximately 200 pounds with black hair and brown eyes. His felony warrant mirrors the urgency of Jones's in its no-bond status and nationwide pickup authority, signaling the department's view of him as a priority for apprehension. Lomeli stands accused of aggravated assault with a deadly firearm, a charge that alleges he intentionally created a well-founded fear of imminent violence through the use or threatened use of a gun or comparable deadly weapon. Florida statutes elevate simple assault to this level when a firearm enters the equation, carrying significant prison exposure upon conviction. As with other active warrants from the department, his current whereabouts appear unknown, prompting repeated calls for public assistance via the same anonymous tip channels. Online submissions through Crime Watch or phone contact with DeLand Police or Volusia County Sheriff's Office at 386-627-400. The warrant's details remain focused on the core allegation without additional public elaboration on the incident's exact circumstances, such as precise timing or specific interactions leading to the charge. Yet the classification as aggravated, combined with the deadly weapon specification, underscores a perceived threat that extends beyond the initial event, justifying the broad alert and lack of bond. Authorities consistently include the standard presumption of innocence language in postings, balancing the need to inform the public with legal protections for the accused. This case, like Jones's, highlights the role of most wanted features in smaller Florida cities, where fugitive alerts can generate tips from everyday residents who recognize a face from a shared community space. The firearm element adds a layer of immediacy, as such charges often tied to disputes that could reignite if the suspect remains free. Volusia County's coordination between local police and the sheriff's office keeps these warrants visible across platforms, from social media shares to dedicated crime-solving apps, all aimed at closing the loop through community involvement. Together, the outstanding warrants for Jones and Lomeli represent different angles of alleged violent conduct. One rooted in intimate partner dynamics with added vulnerability from pregnancy, the other involving an armed threat that could endanger anyone in proximity. Both remain active into 2026, their unresolved nature a reminder that Florida's pursuit of suspects in serious felonies does not fade with time. Each tip line call, each shared alert, carries the potential to shift these cases from open warrants to courtroom proceedings, where evidence can be weighed and outcomes determined. As we wrap up this 5-part series on Florida's most dangerous criminals from recent and trending cases, We've covered the heartbreaking youth-driven triple murder in Ocklawaha with Tahj Brewton, Christopher Atkins, and Robert Robinson, the cross-state shooting rampage linked to Russell Kot, the random triple homicide near Kissimmee attributed to Ahmad Jihad Bojeh, the armed robbery spree in Volusia County involving Brahyan Starlyn Prato-Ortega, and now these two lingering violent warrants for Hal Jones Jr. and Dolores Eduardo Lomeli. Each story reveals how violence can erupt in quiet towns, tourist areas, or personal relationships, leaving lasting impacts on victims, families, and entire communities. Thank you for joining Echo Case File Channel through every detail of these real events. If any part of this series moved you, sparked a thought, or simply held your attention, please like, comment your takeaways, and subscribe for future deep dives into true crime across Florida and beyond. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you in the next one.